Have you ever stopped to really think about aging? I mean, it's just something we all do, right? But what if I told you it might not be as inevitable as we think? What if it's less like a fact of life and more like, well, an engineering problem waiting to be solved? That's the question David Wood tackles in his book, The Abolition of Aging. He's a futurist, really digs into the potential of technology, and he makes a pretty compelling case that aging isn't this fixed part of being human. It might just be the next big challenge we overcome. So today we are going deep on this one. We're diving into the core arguments and the evidence from Wood's book to give you the info you need to form your own opinion on this wild, potentially world-changing topic.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things Wood does is use history to kind of shake up our assumptions about aging.
Okay, I'm listening. Lay it on me.
Well, think about way back when people thought flying was totally impossible. Wood's argument is that we're making that same mistake with aging. Like we're so used to our own limitations, we can't even imagine what might be possible scientifically. He gives this example back in the 1920s, like the leading demographers at the time, they were convinced that the max human lifespan was like 65 years.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they couldn't fathom living much past that. And like now we look back and think, okay, that's kind of crazy. But his point is, future generations might look at our ideas about aging now the same way.
That's a really interesting point. Makes you think, what are we taking for granted now that's going to seem totally absurd in a couple decades?
Exactly. And what's even wilder is we're already seeing evidence that aging isn't this unbreakable rule. We just have to look to nature.
Right, like that immortal jellyfish that can basically rewind its own clock. That completely blows my mind. It's like nature's dropping us hints or something.
Absolutely. Wood
Yeah.
talks about these creatures that age insanely slowly or like barely at all. He uses this term negligible senescence, but basically means they don't deteriorate with age like we do. He's got this one example about a clam, right? They found the thing was over 500 years old.
Hold up, 500 years old. You're messing with me, right?
I'm serious. And then you've got like the fulmar bird, right? This bird, it keeps this crazy youthful appearance its whole life, which is really, really long, by the way. It's insane.
You know what gets me? It's like you've got these ageless birds over here just living their best lives. Then you've got us humans over here. It's like we're experiencing time and life completely differently.
It's a great point. And it does make you wonder, what if somewhere in those examples, in those long lifespans, is the key to unlocking a different kind of future for us? You know?
Okay, so we've got nature bending the rules of aging, but what about us humans? Can we actually hack the system?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And Wood really gets into some seriously cutting-edge research that's happening like right now. We're talking gene editing, stem cell therapy, even like 3D printed organs.
Whoa, that's straight out of sci-fi. Just imagine it, being able to actually fix the damage of aging in our bodies, not just like dealing with the symptoms as they pop up, but actually repairing things. That changes everything.
Totally. But, and Wood acknowledges this too, we got to be realistic about the challenges, right? These technologies, they're still in those early stages. We've got hurdles to clear regulatory approval, funding, not to mention potential risks that need to be figured out.
Right. It's not like we're all going to be popping rejuvenation pills next week or anything. But Wood makes this comparison to computing power and genome sequencing. Remember, like a few decades ago, that stuff was crazy expensive, super complicated, and now look, it's getting more accessible all the time.
Exactly. And that same kind of exponential progress, it could totally happen with this rejuvenation tech. He also talks about this idea of collaborative rejuveneering. So imagine open source research, just like totally accelerating breakthroughs the way open source software changed tech. It's like a similar idea.
Yeah. So we might be on the verge of being able to like hack aging. But hold on, that brings up another question. Should we even be doing that? Wood spends a good chunk of the book looking at, the psychological and social side of living, like way longer lives. What happens to humanity if we're living for centuries? Can we even wrap our heads around that kind of world?
It's a huge question. Wood talks about what he calls the accepting aging paradigm, which is basically this ingrained belief that, aging and death are just natural, even desirable parts of life, right?
Yeah.
We're just so used to this idea of having a limited lifespan that this idea of like radically extending it, it's almost unsettling.
It's true. It's like trying to picture a totally different reality. And Wood gets that. He talks about that anxiety, all those objections we hear about life extension, overpopulation, societies getting stagnant, even that whole playing God thing. It's easy to go down that rabbit hole of what ifs.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But he kind of pushes back against those fears too, saying that a lot of it comes from a lack of imagination. He paints this picture of what he calls a humanity future, where like work, family, even our whole understanding of what life's about, it could all evolve in ways that lead to a more fulfilling and just like dynamic society.
So instead of clinging to what's familiar, we need to be open to those possibilities, even if they seem kind of scary at first, right? After all, haven't we always adapted to huge societal shifts? Isn't that part of what makes us human, embracing the unknown? I mean, look at history. Like, think about it. The printing press, the internet, those were massive changes. But we figured it out. We always do, right? This could be like the next big step for us.
And it's something some really smart people have thought about too, like Richard Feynman, the physicist, Nobel Prize winner, the whole deal. He said this once, and it stuck with me. There is nothing in biology yet found that indicates the inevitability of death.
If a guy like that saw aging as solvable, maybe we should at least consider it, right? Makes you think, for sure. Especially with all the tough stuff that comes with aging, you know what I mean? The body breaking down, losing your independence, it's rough. If we could change that, wouldn't that be amazing?
Totally. Wood's thing is, if we start seeing aging as a disease, something we can treat, something we can cure, then we have a moral duty to try, right? Like, think about it. We eradicated smallpox. We're close with polio. We didn't just accept those as inevitable.
That's a good point. It changes how you see the whole thing, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
But then we've got these other questions, right? How do we deal with a world where death is optional? What happens to how we see the purpose of life then? And how do we make sure everyone has access to these, rejuvenation technologies if they become a reality?
Yeah, those are some big questions. And Wood gets into them, definitely. He says we need to be talking about this stuff now before it all becomes real. We got to figure out the ethics, the challenges, and get ready for a future that could be totally different from anything we can imagine.
He's not saying it's going to be a utopia or anything. He's realistic. There'll be new challenges, even without aging. But he believes in humanity. He sees a future where we use our ingenuity, our ability to adapt, and we create a world that's not just longer, but better, more fulfilling.
So there you have it. We've gone deep on David Wood's The Abolition of Aging. What do you think? Are you on board? A little unsure. Maybe a bit of both. Whatever your take, one thing's for sure. This isn't some thought experiment anymore. We are really close to breakthroughs that could completely change how we understand life and death.
Couldn't agree more. If you're intrigued even a little, go check out The Abolition of Aging. It's worth a read for sure. It really gets you thinking about a future that might be closer than we realize.
And hey, who knows? Maybe someday this whole idea of just accepting aging, it'll seem as outdated as, like, I don't know, using a rotary phone or something.
A world where we have a say in how long we live wild, right? Makes you think.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.